Bobbie Bingham, and Bobbie's going to tell us something really cool, how she survived like a wizard.
I was born the last of 3 children, so I've always kind of brought up the ending. One of the earliest Bible verses that I ever learned in my life was from Psalm 23, and it says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." And when I was a kid and I would encounter some really frightening event, like falling off my horse and being afraid to get back on, my dad would say to me, "Bobbie Lynn, there comes a time when you take that bull by the horns and you stare fear straight in the face, carve your path and move forward." And you see, when I was first diagnosed with breast cancer in February of 2018, I had no intention of being a conventional patient. I had no intention of walking down a path of Western medicine and engaging in chemotherapy. But I soon became the most compliant patient ever. I did absolutely everything that the Cone Cancer Center and my team of professionals told me to do. But I want to take you on my journey and help you understand how I got there. You see, as a mental health professional, I'm often called on to be an expert in the field of childhood trauma, and I'm called to the courtroom to testify on behalf of children who've experienced more psychological suffering and trauma than you or I can imagine in a lifetime. And one of the beautiful things about working with these children is that I get to witness this beautiful phenomenon called magical thinking. It was first documented around 1928 by a famous developmental psychologist, Jean Piaget. And we're all familiar with the little guy that wears a red suit and he travels around and he has lots of worker bees and elves, and once a year he travels in a magic sleigh and he delivers presents to all the children in the world that have been good. We know about fairy tales, and we know about unicorns, and Batman and Superman and Superwoman. And it's a beautiful thing to observe in children. So if you fast forward to just a couple of years ago, and I was working with this beautiful little girl, and we took my therapy dog, Kirby, and we went for a nice walk. And we talked about her life experience. She was around 6 years old. And she, too, had experienced a significant amount of heartache and trauma. So this little girl, we're walking along and we're talking about the things that had happened to her and how she was dealing with it, and we're walking along and all of a sudden she stops. It's the prince's castle. Not really. It's a church. Can we just for 1 second, can we just for right now pretend that it's the prince's castle? Of course we can. And she turned and she looked at the beautiful turret and she began to shout, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair! Rapunzel, let down your hair!" And I joined her. "Rapunzel, let down your hair!" And when Rapunzel didn't respond, this little girl looked up at me and she said, "She's allergic to Kirby and that's why she's not coming out." Okay, I can work with that. And you see, it wasn't that this little girl was failing to address her childhood trauma and all the events that had happened to her. It was simply a reprieve for her in that moment. It was simply a way for her to live into what she hoped would be a happy ending for her life. And so now we fast forward to February the 16th, 2018, when I was called down to the breast center to receive the results of a biopsy that I'd had for a tumor that I had found on my breast. And so I took my good friend and neighbor Tracy with me, and we go to the breast center and they put me in this little room, and it was very formal. You know it's not good when they give you the settee and the little table and the lamp. And sure enough, the doctor walks in and she says, "I'm sorry, Ms. Bingham, but you have breast cancer, and I can't tell you more right now, But if you will go next week on Wednesday to the Cone Cancer Center, they will give you more information. You can plan to be there for about 3 hours. So my friend Tracy and I left, and we went home, and I told my family. And I didn't quite know what to do with myself that evening, and so I went to my neighbor Tracy's house, and I began to drink copious amounts of wine, because that would surely numb my pain. And so Tracy and I sat there, and I started texting my closest friends. I just became a member of the Pink Ribbon Club, and I'm going to need you, so please be here for me. I'm about to pay some dues, and they're heavy, I understand. So the next day I got up, and I solicited the help of another really good friend, and we began a massive research for all the alternative ways that I could address my breast cancer. I had no plan of doing chemotherapy. It wasn't a part of my life plan. So by Wednesday, I had 30 questions, 30 reasons why I wasn't going to do chemotherapy, and I was going to do something alternative. So my friend agreed to go with me to the cancer center, and we get there, and they put me in this little room, and my friend, and we sit down, and in comes this man, and he extends his hand, and he introduces himself as Dr. Gudina, the oncologist. We've all heard about him this evening, right? So he introduces himself to me, and he sits down, and he slides up next to me with a blank piece of paper and a clipboard, and he says, it's easier if I can illustrate and write out for you. Write out for you. He began to draw a perfect breast. His handwriting was impeccable. I work with a lot of doctors in the treatment teams for children, and I'm telling you, not all of them write so straightly across a blank piece of paper. So anyway, he begins to talk about the proposed course of treatment and what my cancer looked like, and when he got to the chemotherapy part, and he said, and the side effects will be nausea and vomiting, fatigue, mouth sores, possible neuropathy, tingling, and pain in your hands and your feet, and you may or may not be able to go to work. And I suddenly stood up from that chair because I was leaving that room. If I could just get out of that room, this would all go away, because this is not happening to me. It is not a part of my life plan. I got to go. And I'm standing there, and I can see the door handle. I can see my friend. I can see this man. I can't get to the door. I'm frozen in time. And I hear this voice with the gift of psychic distance, and it says, what do you need? I was a little bit shocked. I turned around and I said, I need a fan, because I was sweating. Well, it was a brochure for the Pink Ribbon Club, for sure. And again, I hear this voice as I'm standing there fanning myself. I hear this voice again say, what do you need? And at that moment, I turned around and I realized that I'm still a trauma professional. I have everything I need in my little mental health toolbox, and I just need to pull it out and address my panic attack, because that's what was happening to me. And so I said, I just need just a minute, Doc. Let me do what I tell the children in my practice to do. And I put my body in what's called a pretzel position, because it will stop a panic attack dead in its tracks, but you got to have the wherewithal to employ it. And so I put myself in this pretzel position, and I began to breathe deeply. And on the fourth exhale, I opened my eyes, and my dear friend and that man with many years of education were breathing with me. And I'm telling you, my friends, that was pivotal for me. It was so critical for me to be allowed the space to be with that fear and experience it. And so I was able to return to the meeting, and Dr. Gudina continued, and then he left, and the other professionals came into the room and explained their role to me. And I listened to them all, and at the end of the day, I said, I need to go home and think about this, and I'll get back to you. And so I left, and I got a second opinion, and I prayed, and I thought about it, and a week later, I called Dr. Gudina's nurse, and I said, I need to see him. And I went back to see him, and I sat down, and I said, look, I'm ready to go. I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get on with this program. One of the things that I forgot earlier to tell you was that what Dr. Gudina said would happen if I followed his course of treatment was a 94% cure rate. I couldn't compete with that. All of my research just flew out the window because I didn't have the numbers to support it. Anyway, so I began this journey, and I remembered the words of famous author Rainer Maria Rilke, who said, "The only journey is the one within." And so I began this journey within. And I informed my friends, and I gathered all my friends and my family and support from everyone that I could possibly think of. And I became very open and public about what was happening to me. And one of my friends, who's a breast cancer survivor, said, "Bobbie, whatever you do, you must think of this chemotherapy as a magic potion designed to heal your body." Magic potion? I can work with that. I can work with magic potion. And then my friends all gathered, and they gave me a hat and a wig party, and we had a really good time that night. And a couple of my friends walked in, and they brought me 2 wizard hats. And I said, of course, I am going to put on this wizard hat one day every 3 weeks, and I'm going to roll on down to the cancer center, and I'm going to pretend it's my wizard camp. Because if I can live into that wizard camp, that's my happy ending. I'm going to go have a good time. And you know what? As ridiculous as it may seem, we had a fabulous time. My friends all volunteered, and they came with me, and we'd go to that wizard camp, and we'd all wear hats, and we'd make funny videos, and we'd laugh and giggle like schoolgirls in a scene from a Harry Potter movie. And we had a good time because, you see, I was living into my happy ending. And it was good for me, and it was good for them, and I remembered all the children that had crossed my path in my office, and how amazing it is that they can come there and we process this really difficult trauma, and then we play, and they engage in magical thinking, and it helps them to survive. And so this crazy wizard hat helped me to survive. And so my challenge for you is to support the research. Support your friends if someone you know has been diagnosed with cancer, because it's not easy. And you know, I managed to grab a hold of that bull, stare him straight in the face my fears, and I stood up to the challenge, just like my dad had said, and just like the Bible teaches us. And so my challenge to you is, if you have a friend that's been diagnosed with cancer, again, be there for them. Support the research, because when the numbers look like 94%, we make progress. And teach someone else to live like a wizard. Thank you.